Emma Parker sat by her apartment window in Boston, watching rain streak down the glass, feeling the emptiness settle deeper in her chest. Her life had become a series of quiet routines: wake up, work, come home, eat dinner alone, and try to pretend everything was normal, because pretending had become easier than facing the truth. Mark, her husband, had grown distant over the past months, his smiles no longer reaching his eyes, his touch hesitant and absent. Emma kept asking herself what had changed, what she had done wrong, why love could feel so cold when it had once been warm and constant. She buried her hurt in household chores, long walks in the park, and late nights with books that offered temporary comfort. But the loneliness only grew heavier. On one particularly dreary Thursday, a notification on her phone lit up the dim room. A text from Daniel, her old college friend. "Dinner tonight? I have something to tell you." Her heart skipped. Daniel had always been different from others. He saw her, understood her, and had a quiet way of making her feel alive when the world seemed gray. She stared at the message, hesitating. Going meant reopening old connections, risking emotions she hadn't fully sorted, but curiosity and a flicker of hope nudged her forward. She replied with a simple, "Okay," and spent the next hours cleaning her apartment with distracted hands, trying to calm the fluttering in her stomach. By evening, the rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, and she walked to the small restaurant Daniel had suggested, its warm lights spilling onto the wet sidewalk. As she stepped inside, she felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Daniel stood at a corner table, smiling in that familiar way that had once made her feel safe and cherished. The world outside melted away as he waved, and for a moment, Emma almost forgot the pain that had shadowed her days. They sat down, and the initial awkwardness faded quickly into comfortable silence, the kind that only forms between people who have known each other through years of laughter, shared secrets, and quiet understanding. Daniel's eyes held concern, and when he spoke, his voice carried care and a subtle urgency. "Emma, I've watched you struggle, and I want to help." That simple admission felt like sunlight breaking through clouds she hadn't realized she had been living under. Questions and emotions tumbled through her mind, each one competing for attention, but she allowed herself to simply be present, to sit across from someone who genuinely seemed to care. As they began to talk, the words flowed naturally, memories and gentle reassurances filling the space between them. Daniel reminded her of the person she had once been, strong, vibrant, full of life, and slowly, Emma felt the tight knot of anxiety in her chest loosen. She realized that this dinner was not just a meeting, but a turning point, a moment where hope could sneak back in, where the possibility of emotional healing felt tangible. Outside, the drizzle continued, but inside, warmth, understanding, and a quiet spark of connection began to bloom, setting the stage for a night that would change everything. The waiter brought over 2 bowls of tomato soup, steam curling up like gentle clouds, filling the small restaurant with a comforting aroma that seemed to ease the tension between them. Emma lifted her spoon, and the warmth of the first bite spread through her chest, a simple comfort she hadn't realized she needed so badly. Daniel watched her with quiet attentiveness, his eyes soft but serious, as if he could see the layers of hurt she had been carrying alone. "You don't have to go through this alone, Emma," he said, his voice low but steady. "I know it's hard to admit, but Mark, he's changed, and you deserve more than half-hearted affection." Her throat tightened, a lump forming as the words hit a raw nerve she had tried to ignore. She had blamed herself for the distance, wondered if she had failed, if somehow she had caused the emptiness in their marriage. Hearing it said aloud, by someone who cared and saw her clearly, felt like a release, like someone had handed her permission to feel, to grieve, to hope again. Daniel continued, leaning slightly forward, his hands resting calmly on the table. "I'm not here to judge, Emma. I'm here to remind you that you're worth love, fully and deeply." The gentle firmness in his voice made her chest ache with a mix of gratitude and longing. She felt a tear slip past the corner of her eye, and Daniel reached across instinctively, brushing it away with the back of his hand, careful and tender. They talked then, in the quiet rhythm of shared history, recalling old college memories, inside jokes, and moments of laughter they had once taken for granted. Each story wove a thread of connection, and Emma felt herself leaning into it, feeling seen in a way she hadn't in months. The conversation shifted subtly, from past joys to present struggles, and Emma began to speak of the quiet heartbreak she had carried, how the small things Mark ignored or forgot made her feel invisible, how nights of silence had left her restless and lonely. Daniel listened without interruption, nodding, offering soft words of comfort, his presence like a steady flame against the cold winds of her emotions. She realized she hadn't just missed conversation, she had missed being understood, truly understood, by someone who cared without expectation or judgment. The warmth of the soup, the soft lighting of the restaurant, the sincerity in Daniel's gaze, it all combined to create a cocoon of safety where she could finally let down the walls she had built. He reminded her gently of her own worth, her strength, and the life she deserved, igniting a flicker of hope she thought had dimmed forever. For the first time in weeks, Emma laughed freely, the sound mingling with the quiet clatter of dishes around them, and she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to melt. Each bite, each shared glance, each careful word wove a new layer of comfort, a reassurance that she was not alone, that life still held moments of joy, warmth, and understanding. By the time they finished their soup, the rain outside had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the city lights. And inside, Emma felt a subtle shift within herself, a lightness she hadn't known she could feel, a stirring of courage, and the quiet, undeniable sense that something meaningful had begun tonight, something that could slowly mend the emptiness she had carried for too long. By the time dessert arrived, a warm slice of apple pie shared between them, Emma felt a quiet, unexpected comfort settle over her. The simple act of reaching for the fork together made their hands brush, sending a small, thrilling spark through her that she wasn't quite ready to name, yet couldn't ignore. Daniel's eyes met hers, soft and attentive, and she realized how safe and understood she felt in his presence, a stark contrast to the emotional distance she had endured for months with Mark. She wanted to tell him everything, the nights of silent longing, the ache of feeling invisible, the exhaustion of pretending. But words felt fragile, and instead, she allowed herself to simply sit with him, to share the warmth of the moment without fear of judgment. Daniel spoke gently, praising her resilience, reminding her of the strength she had shown even in quiet suffering, and Emma felt a mixture of gratitude and longing that made her chest tighten in an unfamiliar but not unpleasant way. Their conversation drifted naturally between past memories, quiet confessions, and soft laughter, weaving an intimacy that felt both tender and alive, a connection she hadn't realized she was craving. Every glance, every careful word, every shared smile deepened the unspoken bond between them, a bond that felt like a lifeline, pulling her out of the darkness of loneliness. Emma noticed the way Daniel listened, really listened, how he made space for her emotions without trying to fix or dismiss them, and in that, she found a sense of validation and recognition she had been starving for. Time seemed to slow, the small restaurant around them fading into background warmth, leaving only the shared quiet moments and the subtle electricity of unspoken feelings. She realized that this was more than a casual dinner. It was a turning point, a moment where emotional walls were gently crumbling, where trust and connection could take root again. The tension of months of heartbreak and doubt began to give way to the fragile hope of something new, a possibility of tenderness and care that could heal long-hidden wounds. Yet, even as Emma allowed herself to feel this quiet joy, a part of her hesitated, aware of the boundaries, aware of the past that still lingered, and aware that life was about to challenge this newfound sense of peace in a way she hadn't anticipated. Just as she prepared to voice the mix of relief and curiosity swelling inside her, the door to the restaurant opened, letting in a rush of cool air and a familiar presence that made her stomach twist. Mark was there. The sight of him, standing uncertainly, disrupted the gentle rhythm of the evening, and for the first time in hours, Emma's mind raced, caught between the comfort of what was blooming with Daniel and the unresolved tension with her husband. The moment felt suspended, the world narrowing to the distance between them, and the choice she now sensed looming in her heart, a choice that could define the rest of her life. All around, the soft glow of the restaurant seemed to hold its breath, leaving Emma on the edge of an emotional precipice, realizing that tonight was no longer just a dinner. It was the beginning of a path that could lead to heartbreak, healing, or something entirely unexpected, and she had to decide which way to step before the moment slipped past her forever. Mark's sudden appearance at the restaurant made Emma's heart pound, a mix of fear, confusion, and unresolved hurt flooding through her. She froze for a moment, staring at him, trying to make sense of his presence, while Daniel's hand lightly brushed hers, a subtle anchor that reminded her she was not alone. Mark's eyes searched hers, filled with guilt and uncertainty as he stepped closer, his voice tentative. "Emma, I didn't expect to see you here." The words sounded small, almost inadequate, against the weight of months of distance and the emotional walls she had been forced to build. Emma felt a surge of clarity and strength she hadn't realized had been quietly growing inside her. She no longer needed to stay silent or numb, and she could finally confront the reality of her marriage and what she truly wanted. Mark tried to explain, stumbling over half-hearted apologies and excuses, but Emma saw through the veneer, recognizing the emptiness of words that hadn't been backed by actions for so long. She turned slightly toward Daniel, whose supportive gaze met hers, giving her courage to acknowledge her own needs and feelings for the first time in months. The warmth she had felt over the evening, the laughter, the gentle connection, the sense of being truly seen, contrasted sharply with the cold distance Mark had maintained, and she realized that her heart was no longer willing to settle for less than respect, care, and genuine affection. Taking a slow breath, Emma found her voice, soft but firm, and whispered, I need to start over." It was a declaration more to herself than to anyone else, a commitment to reclaim her life, her happiness, and her ability to love freely without compromise. Daniel's hand squeezed hers reassuringly, a silent promise that she didn't have to face the uncertainty alone, that she could step forward into a future built on understanding, tenderness, and mutual care. Mark's confusion and hurt were evident, but Emma didn't waver. She knew that staying in a relationship that had eroded her spirit was no longer an option. Together, Emma and Daniel left the restaurant, stepping out into the crisp night air, the city lights reflecting off the wet streets, creating a sense of renewal and possibility. With each step, Emma felt the past's weight lift slightly, replaced by the fragile but powerful hope that life could still surprise her, that love could be gentle, nurturing, and healing. The evening that began as a simple invitation to dinner had transformed into a turning point, a moment where Emma chose herself, her happiness, and the promise of new beginnings. As they walked side by side, sharing quiet conversation and soft laughter, Emma understood that healing could start with something as simple as being seen and understood, that emotional connection could mend the deepest wounds, and that love, when it was true and respectful, had the power to change everything, even after heartbreak. The night air carried the soft hum of possibility, and for the first time in months, Emma felt a sense of freedom, a quiet joy, and the courage to embrace a future that was entirely hers to shape, where love and healing could grow together, one gentle step at a time.